Ah, yes, I love the old $10 paper banknotes. Let's take a deep dive into the values, all the different details that are on the notes, and inside the notes. Let's get straight into it. Firstly, these notes were started in 1966 and began with the Commonwealth of Australia printed on the banknotes up until 1972. And then from then on, it was just Australia on the top of the banknotes through to the start of the last run in 1991. These notes had a few features that protected them from forgery. So a metal strip woven through the banknote and also a watermark in the window over here. So when you look at this, you can't see those two features, but if you put a light on behind the banknote, you can see that metal strip running through the note right there. And you can see here Captain Cook, the watermark in the background in that white window of the note. And another little interesting fact is this metal strip was placed near the center of the note for a number of years, and then they changed the position of that to a bit further to the side of the note. You can see it on this one, the later note and the bottom, and that is because it created an extra wear on the note where the note tended to want to fold and crease in that center section. So they moved it further across to prevent that from happening. For working out values on the $10 notes, I like to use this book, the Renwick's Australian Coin and Banknote Values book, 32nd edition. And if you flick to the $10 notes page, there is a chart. So these ones here on this particular page up to 1972, and you flick over the page, it has the banknotes down to the start of the last run in 1991 of the paper banknotes. So all of these values here are to do with the notes depending on which year it is and the different features of the notes, and also the condition grading of the notes up here. So flick back to this page here, you can see some of these here go up to really high values. Look at that, $26,500 for a perfect condition. So that's uncirculated condition banknote. It's one of these star notes, which is a replacement note. So if one of the notes was sort of damaged or faulty in the printing process, they removed that and then they replaced it with a star note, and that star note had a little star at the start of the serial number on the banknote. There's probably not many of those around at all, but there might only be one of those in existence at a price like that. So yeah, some of these values are very, very high, and the really high values are usually those star notes, and it says star in here. To work out the value of your paper $10 note, it's good to start with the year. So you can see here on the side the different years, 1966, 67, and so on. And to do that, it doesn't actually have a year on the banknote printed anywhere, but you can work it out by looking at the signatures on the notes, and then corresponding to that is the year that they were produced. So this one here is a Coombs Randall, but some of these signatures are quite hard to read and understand. So in this book, if you flick back a few pages to the page before the $1 notes, it has a signature identification chart, and it has all the signatures that have appeared on the banknotes over the years. So if you become more and more familiar with those signatures, you can sort of know them off the top of your head. So if I come back to this page here and looking at this banknote here, I know that's a Coombs Randall. So if we scroll up here, what we have to do is we have to look for that signature combination. So Coombs Randall. So I know that's a 1967 banknote, this one right here. And actually I've got one right here too. So this one here is a Coombs Randall in uncirculated condition right there. And these are the values. So over here we've got $95 in fine condition, all the way through to $1,100 in uncirculated condition. So those condition gradings, that is on the page where the signatures is too. So the page before the $1 notes, we come back here and it has a banknote condition grading system. So fine, F for fine, VF for very fine, all the way through until uncirculated. So it has a description of the condition that meets that criteria. And if you read that and check that against your banknote, you can find out which value in this chart is the most appropriate for the value, which is a bit of a price guide. Like it's an estimate, I suppose, of roughly what they value this banknote at that condition. Another quick example here, we've got a Fraser Higgins. That's a Fraser Higgins signature combination. So on the second of the pages here, we've got a Fraser Higgins there. So that is a 1989 banknote. And then these are the values through here. So that banknote there is in really good condition, an uncirculated condition, $65 value for that particular banknote right there. Another thing you might have to work out is the serial number font on the banknote. So you can see here we've got Gothic serial or we've got OCRB. Now on the page where the signature identification chart is and the grading definitions, it also has a bit of a glossary, I suppose, for Gothic. This is the Gothic serial font that was used, and this is the OCRB, and that can help you identify and determine which banknotes they are there. So what I like to do is look at the 3s and the 9s. The 9s have got that big loopy underneath, and the 6s have the loop on the top. Whereas the OCRB, the 9s come down a diagonal like that. So I've got two banknotes right here that are the two different font styles. So this banknote at the top here, well, I'll put it at the bottom now, but that is a Gothic serial. So the 9 has that loopy underneath, and this one here is an OCRB with the 9 coming down on an angle. If you wanted to pick up this book, I've got a link to this on my link tree. So just go through the links in my account and you'll find that right there. All right, let's jump into the figures that appear on the $10 paper banknote. Notable Australians, historical figures portrayed on Australian banknotes. So this is put out by the Reserve Bank of Australia, who produced the banknotes here. And on this side of the bank, $10 paper banknote, we've got Francis Greenway. So let's do a little bit of a read as to who he is and why he's on the banknote. Francis Greenway, 1777 to 1837, was an architect in Bristol, England. Charged with forgery in 1812, he awaited trial in Bristol's Newgate prison and was transported to New South Wales in 1814. Ironically, the banknote which portrayed Greenway was itself the object of counterfeiting when it was introduced in 1966. The architect's arrival in the colony coincided fortuitously with the ambitious building program of Governor Lachlan and Mrs. Elizabeth Macquarie, and he was appointed acting civil architect by Macquarie in 1816. In quick succession, Greenway designed barracks, churches, fortifications, hospitals and houses, together with a fountain, lighthouse and obelisk, as Macquarie's vision began to transform the colony. The architectural transformation of the townships attracted censure from John Thomas Bigg, the Commissioner of Inquiry into Macquarie's government, sent from England in 1819. Greenway's design for the Stables to Government House, for example, was considered by the Commissioner to be more elegant than what the necessity of the case required. The building of the stables is now incorporated into the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. Although Greenway was known for his argumentative character and troubled relationship with Macquarie, his buildings reflected the Georgian qualities of balance and harmony. Architectural features of selected buildings designed by Greenway were integrated into the design of the banknote's background, including Sydney's St James Church and the Convict Barracks and St Matthew's Church in Windsor, New South Wales. Let's take a quick look at the banknote right here. So some of those features, structural, architectural features appear on the banknote right there. And here's a portrait of Francis Greenway, which was probably used as inspiration for the depiction that we see on the banknote today. And on this side of the note, we have Henry Lawson. So let's take a bit of a look at Henry Lawson. Henry Lawson's 1867 to 1922 Norwegian father, Niels Larsen, immigrated to the goldfields of New South Wales, where he married Louisa Albury. Scenes of Lawson's childhood years in gold towns like Goolgong were selected for the banknote's background. The images were adapted from the Holterman collection, an extensive photographic archive depicting goldfields held by the State Library of New South Wales. The autobiographical elements of Lawson's short story, A Child in the Dark, and A Foreign Father, evoke the incompatibility of his parents, who separated when he was 15. He joined his mother in Sydney, where she was involved in women's suffrage and Republican politics. His poems began to appear in the Bulletin, and publishers Angus and Robertson accepted his collections of short stories. Lawson's writing often reflected his childhood experiences of the Australian outback, and his reputation increased with stories such as "The Union Buries Its Dead," which seemed to capture the sense of the national character in its laconic dialogue and understated emotion. As he struggled with deafness, poverty, and alcoholism, Lawson's later years were often desperate ones. Difficulty in paying maintenance money to his family and ex-wife, Bertha Brute, led to periods of time in Darlinghurst Jail, Sydney. His landlady and housekeeper, Mrs. Isabel Byers, cared for him during his time of destitution, and while imprisoned in 1909, Lawson wrote to her, "Remember to save every scrap of paper about the house, no matter how ragged or dirty. I've got notes and suggestions and half-finished verses and paragraphs scribbled down all over the shop." He prepared a will in jail, listing those who had supported him. To prevent misconceptions, I wish to say that Mr. Archibald of the Bulletin, Mr. George Robertson of the Angerson Robinson, and my landlady, Mrs. Isabel Byers of 20 William Street off Blues Point Road, were my best friends. I wish Miss Byers to have all my papers and effects to keep and to do what she likes with. On his death, Lawson became the first Australian writer to be granted a state funeral, and a memorial fund was established to raise money for a statue. Sculpted by George Lambert, the statue of Lawson stands in Sydney's Royal Botanic Gardens. So there you go. There's Henry Lawson right there. And here is a portrait of Henry Lawson that was probably used as inspiration for what you see on the banknote today. So there you go, the $10 paper banknotes, great to have in your collection. And you can pick them up on sites like eBay, coin dealers would probably have some, auction houses sell them from time to time. Every now and then I might have some for sale. And then people on social media and people that you might know in the collecting space might have some of these for sale from time to time too. So there's a few different locations you can pick them up. And also, if you're really lucky, banks sometimes have these that you can buy back out at face value. Now, they'll only have them if customers have brought them in to cash them in recently. So the bank holds onto them for a little bit before they send them off to the Reserve Bank, and then the Reserve Bank destroys them. So, so if you're lucky, if you ask kindly at the banks, they might have some, and then they might allow you to buy those back out as well at face value, which is awesome too. So that's how you can get them. The $10 paper banknotes, I love them. Any questions, comments, leave them in the chat. Cool.